In 11 and 12, I was misdiagnosed by 3 doctors with fibromyalgia, and I actually had Lyme disease. And I took myself to a rheumatologist. So I dealt with that for multiple years, and it was invisible and nobody can tell. And, my son and his father at the time were, not laughing at me, but sort of. And it was just very hard, and I was very alone, and it was devastating situation financially, emotionally, physically. And I healed myself through spiritual, medicinal, herbal, so many things. And with no alcohol for over 2.5 years, everything I could do in my power to get well. And then in 2016, I was in a developmental workshop and self-development, and he's like, oh, I started crying within 2 minutes or 2 hours or something, half hour. And he's like, oh, you'd identify yourself with Lyme disease. And I said, light bulb moment, identified. And I went back to my MD, alternative doctor, and I said, can you run blood? And she did, and she said that there was only one marker and she couldn't tell if it was inflammation or what it was. And I was like, okay, I'm done. I'm done after 4 years identifying myself as a sick person.
Do you remember me? I am the part of you that is wise and alive, that is pure love and beyond your limiting mind. I am the you that is inspired, the you that is creative, the you that has true power. Are you ready to remember you?
Hello, and welcome to Remembering You, the show. I am your host, Ellie La Liberté, and I am a published author of 2 spiritual books. And this show is associated with my new book, Letters from You to You, Awaken Your Power Through Conversations with Your Higher Self. This show is about reconnecting to your power, the truth of who you really are. The guests on this show are authentic human beings who have stories to share with us about how they navigated through difficult challenges and illnesses, and also how they uncovered the higher part of themselves. May you feel inspired to go into your own healing journey and remember who you really are. Hi everyone, and welcome back to Remembering You, the show. I am your host, Ellie La Liberté, and today we have a special guest with me. Actually, this is someone that I know, that I've been on her podcast and been, just connecting here and there. And so I am so excited to have her on. Her name is Linda Brand, and she is from Florida. And so, yes, hello, Linda, and welcome to the show.
Hello, Ellie. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here. Congrats on your amazing book. I am so excited for you.
Thank you so much.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
And yeah, like we've had already a podcast together on your own podcast, which you're going to be able to share as well with the audience what you're doing. And I had such an amazing conversation with you on that podcast. So I was like, absolutely, I want to have you on mine, and I want to get to know your end of the story. You've been through healing as well, and brought to you, a coaching program as well. So I'd love for you to share with the audience, like, what was your healing journey?
Sure. Well, how far back do you want me to go?
You can go as far as you want.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I grew up in Michigan my whole life, and I changed my life 2 years ago and relocated across the country when I started hiring coaches in 2017, but it all goes back to, I started out in a family where I didn't really, as a young, like after age 11, I did not have very much supervision. Everybody was doing their own thing. I was the youngest of 3, and I ended up getting involved with, the wrong people. We moved, and I just wanted friends. We want to belong, right? So I had, got in with the burnouts, and that was just the beginning of not good things that happened to me. And my dad worked a lot, and he wasn't a strong father figure. And so I ended up in trouble and drugs, and a lot of things happened to me. And I got arrested, and I mean, nothing's what it looks like, right? But this is, we're talking, 40 years ago, almost 40 years ago. And so I went through a lot of trauma that I was never healed and never properly, there was no therapy or any of that. And then as a young adult, I got into the real estate business, and I came from, my home was more like negative, critical fear, lack, scarcity mindset. Even though we did have things, we weren't like, poverty, but the mindset was poverty. And so that was a program that I had, and, for quite a long time, right? And and I met my son's father, and he was also in real estate, and he was a lot better than the four boyfriends that I had. He wasn't on drugs, and wasn't, he was Jewish and I was Jewish. And so there were just things, even though I grew up kind of with the Christmas tree and being told everybody hates Jews, don't tell anyone you're Jewish. So my dad was an atheist, even though he was raised with religion. So anyway, we didn't really have religion. I didn't really have any supervision as a young girl. I wanted attention from boys because, I didn't have my dad around. So I ended up going down not good when other girls were being, in their extracurricular and looking for colleges and doing those kinds of things. I was just running around with loser boyfriends and doing stupid shit. So that's what happened. And then after the jail and nightmare that I went through there, which was trauma, I, like I said, I've met my son's father, and he wasn't really a match, but that's a whole story, but we ended up having a beautiful child together. So that was the gift and blessing, my son. He's an adult now. And, but anyway, I was in this real estate business, and it really wasn't my passion. But so for many, many years, I was listening to Brian Tracy, Tony Robbins, positivity, because I was aware as a young person that you can't be negative and be in sales. Like, it's not gonna work. So, and then in 2017, I hired my first coach, and she was law of attraction, spiritual, and high vibe. And, as soon as you invest in yourself and hire a coach, you get your shit together, right? You go and like clean up, you're like, okay, I'm not going to waste this money I just spent on myself. So that was the beginning. And then in 2021, I was struggling financially, and I was not happy, and my son was almost finishing college, and that's a positive that he was getting through it. And long story short, I took myself to an event in Chicago. I drove in the winter by myself, the longest I've ever driven, 4.5 hours. I met these ladies. They were all staying for the workshop. I didn't stay because I didn't well, I think I wanted to, and the pet sitter couldn't stay longer. I don't know, it was some little thing, but I met these women. They all invited me into a Zoom, even though we just had dinner. We just met the one night. But when I was there, I was like, these are my people. I finally found my people. Like, they're all coaches, and I wasn't a coach, but they were just cool, spiritual, just like me. And then they all invite me into a Zoom on a Friday. And then two of the women, one was from Texas, one was from Arizona, had flown to Chicago, and they were flying again to Miami 2 weeks later because of their transformation and their epiphanies and their growths. So I was like, okay, I have to go, because I had been on the fence about the Miami trip. And then I'm like, I just have to. Like, if nothing changes, nothing changes. So even though I was in debt, I was like, I'm doing this because what's going to be different? Nothing. So this keeps being a pattern in my life where I do that to myself. I'm like, well, what's going to be different?
Yeah.
So I have the courage, and I went to Miami, and my whole, like, it was epiphany, aha. And then the final night, I was washing my hands in the restroom of this Italian restaurant, because we never left the hotel. We just were there all day for a workshop, and then we'd eat dinner there. And this one night I said, let's just go next door to the next hotel and eat dinner there. And we did, and I was washing my hands, and I get this message: you belong here. You belong in Florida. This was Miami. I am not in Miami. I'm on the other side of the state, but It was like, you belong here. And I came back to the table. I told my two friends, or the two ladies I was having dinner with, and they're like, "Oh my God, that's amazing. You're moving to Florida." And I was like, "Well, I don't know. I don't know how this is going to happen." And because I also, yeah, I grew up in like also that fear, like they never traveled. They, stayed in their little box. My mother watches her TV and doesn't leave the house. And, you know, my dad stopped driving when he stopped working. So it was like, it was a big deal. And anyway, I ended up, my son, everything lined up, the universe lined up, everything lined up for me to go to Florida. Because 2 weeks later, my son's graduating and he's like, "I'm moving to Kentucky." I'm like, "Oh, he's moving away. What am I doing in Michigan? Nobody talk, I have nothing here." So I ended up, after multiple things, I ended up listing my house. I was, and I sold it and I sold it on 2/22/22 actually.
Wow.
Came
Mhm.
down to Florida and yes. And me and my rescue dog came down to Florida, and that was at the beginning of our new chapter. And I ended up taking a podcast class and starting a podcast. It's called Empowered. You were on it. I started a coaching business and got my Florida real estate license. And so it's been a journey for sure, but a ton of healing has taken place since I've relocated. A
Wow.
ton more. The layers just keep happening and you're like, you thought you were done, and then it's like more and more and more, crying and crying and crying. Because that's how we heal.
You're releasing, right? All of this crying is all releasing. This energy that's just coming out of you. It's beautiful.
Yeah,
Nice.
you're welcome. Yeah.
So that is very, very much, there's a lot I feel that happened in a short amount of time. Like there's a
Yeah,
lot
I
of
left
things
the big piece out too. I'm sorry. I've
that's
completely
okay.
left. In 11 and 12, I was misdiagnosed by 3 doctors with fibromyalgia, and I actually had Lyme disease. And I took myself to rheumatologist. So I dealt with that for multiple years, and it was invisible and nobody can tell. And, my son and his father at the time were, not laughing at me, but sort of. And it was just very hard. And I was very alone, and it was devastating situation financially, emotionally, physically.
Mm.
And I healed myself through spiritual, medicinal, herbal, so many things. And with no alcohol for over 2.5 years, everything I could do in my power to get well. And then in 2016, I was in a developmental workshop and self-development, and he's like, "Oh, I started crying within 2 minutes or 2 hours or something, half hour." And he's like, "Oh, you'd identify yourself with Lyme disease." And I said, light bulb moment, identified. And I went back to my MD alternative doctor and I said, "Can you run blood?" And she did. And she said there was only one marker and she couldn't tell if it was inflammation or what it was. And I was like, "Okay, I'm done. I'm done after 4 years identifying myself as a sick person."
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Wow. And do you still have your fibromyalgia? Is it still, do you still have some symptoms from that and even the Lyme disease, or is it completely gone?
So I think I probably did still have some, but I was recently bit and I think I was reinfected, and I went to the doctor and I made him draw blood and give me antibiotics. And the blood work, they called and told me everything was negative. And then the health department just called and told me there was one marker that was positive for Lyme, and they couldn't tell if it was because of 10 years ago but I was having some symptoms. But I'm working with an energy healer right now, and I'm also um just taking, because I know from all that I went through and all the spiritual work that it's likely I was under a lot of stress because I recently switched real estate offices and just jumped into that. And I'm trying to build coaching, podcast, real estate. It's like, wonder my body's saying, "Hey, pay attention, slow down." Like, so
Sure, it's
yeah,
kind of like a messenger, sure. Yeah. Hmm. That's
exactly.
still scary, when you get that diagnosis and then you're like, what do I do with this, right? Because um, it's not something that, and even you're like fibromyalgia, I actually, my she's not my mother-in-law. She used to be my mother-in-law before. I'm trying to find the word. She
Your
had
ex-mother-in-law.
my
Your
ex.
ex-mother-in-law.
Thank you. Yes, my ex mother-in-law had fibromyalgia all of her life, and it is related to stress for sure. And so I am curious to know, because I think that this is something that is common, especially in women, if I'm correct. How did you, like, if you don't have a lot of, like, you don't have any more symptoms of that at all, or do you still have some kind of,
Okay.
how did you deal with this when it comes to energy?
This episode is brought to you by Remembering You, the coaching program. As a published author of a spiritual self-help book, it was crucial for me to bring to my readers a program that would help them go deeper into their emotional healing and release childhood trauma. This program includes journaling therapy, soma breathwork, and hypnotherapy to help investigate, release, and reprogram. Go to lettersbyellie.com to learn more. And now, back to the show.
Yeah. So a couple things. One is, to me, fibromyalgia, my understanding of it is a name that they give you when they don't know what you have. And
Yeah.
it's an umbrella, and anything it could be under there. Okay. I did not have fibromyalgia. I had Lyme disease, but they
Oh,
told me I had that because they didn't know it was Lyme disease until
okay.
I did my own digging and became my own health advocate.
Wow.
But when
Hmm.
I first found out it was Lyme, I was, first of all, I used to never even talk about it. I was so ashamed and so embarrassed, and I kept it secret, and I never told anyone. But um
Hmm.
now clearly I talk about it a little more. But the thing is, when I found out, I was relieved to at least know, right? Oh, I know what it is now. I can solve it, because I had all this joint pain and I had tingling and I had all these, like, what is going on? But it turned out the first doctor I called wanted $1,000 for the first visit, and the second and this is back, back in 12, so 12 years ago. And the doctor couldn't get in until April, November. It was not good. And I went back to my MD, who I'd been complaining to and going to her, like, what is it? What is it? And I showed her the blood work, and she's like, oh, okay. Like, now she understands. So, anyway, I don't want to bore everybody with this conversation about my health, but the bottom line is, yeah, all the trauma manifests in the body. And I have to tell you guys, I had one lady on my show, the beginning of the show, and she had been diagnosed with MS, and now she's a coach for these women that have MS or have these diagnoses. And she teaches them yoga and all these natural things to heal. And she goes, she will never speak I have,
Yeah. She doesn't
because
identify.
I was diagnosed with.
Yeah.
And so I am similar, and I just had an energy healing session, like I said, Friday, that I'm hopeful is doing something, as my antibiotics ran out. But I don't want to, I want to just believe that the universe, like, this is for me. It's for me, because I was doing too many things, and you're not going to master anything when you're doing everything.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. It's the impersonal life that is speaking to you. And it's beautiful that you're seeing it that way. And that you're, you created also, a brand, a coaching brand. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Thank you for saying that. Believe me, I was a victim mindset for a minute, for a little bit there too. But, so I just got certified, provisionally certified with the Mary Morrissey's program, the Brave Institute, which is, a life mastery consultant and dream builder coach. So being that I'm coaching people on how to achieve their dreams, I am going for my dreams, which I already transformed my life, relocating, doing all these things. It takes courage, but we can still desire more and bigger, and having a large, having, dreaming big is a skill set.
Mhm.
That was that coach that turned what we talked to you about before we hit record. she said that, and it's very true. Thinking big is a skill set. So I am doing the big thinking right now. And what we are all experiencing currently, this is my little tip of coaching, it's a circumstance that's temporary. It's temporary.
Absolutely.
And we have to zoom out and like realize this is just, yeah, it's the journey. So,
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, well, I want to do a little exercise with you. It has to do with my book. So, my book is composed of 21 letters, and all of the letters are written from the perspective of your higher self, as if your higher self is speaking directly to you. And every letter has a theme to it. And so, I would want to have your perspective on one of the letters, but you're going to choose a number between 1 and 21, and let's see what comes out.
okay, I'm gonna pick my life path number, which is 11.
11. Ooh, I think I know that one by heart, but I'm gonna double check. I don't know them all by heart, the themes. So we go here. So letter number 11, that's what you said, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so the number 11 is called Merged with Me. So what that means is what I'm explaining in that letter is how when you finally remember who you are, what are the experiences that you're having as being connected to that higher self, and what are you kind of like, we go through a lot of pain in our healing journey, but once we go on the other side of it, like what is out there for us to experience in that energy, in that alignment. So I'd love for you to share with us just quickly on what have you seen that has changed since you've been doing your healing, and when you've come on the other side of something, like has been the difference in your energy and the way of looking at things.
Um, a couple things. One is we are powerful, and you said, remember who you are and merging with. So what comes to me is I'm all about luxury and abundance and beauty, and I'm a sensual being. I love flowers and I love good food and nature and things like that. So I know that when I embody and when I choose to be like come from my dream life, like come from her, like who is she and how does she carry herself, and taking and just being conscious with my thoughts in my mind, and just like being present, which I know you talk about in your book. And so it's really my dream life. It's my dream life in the now, right now. Like just her, becoming her. So what was the initial question? It was merging.
So the theme is uh, merged with me. So the me in that sense is your higher self. Like how do you feel when you are, being really connected to that self? Like how are you experiencing your life and your circumstances from that point of view now?
Yeah, I'm happier, I'm lighter, I'm more joyful, I'm enjoying the ride. I am knowing I'm less worried and just higher, just much more in flow and trusting and knowing, just knowing that I'm safe and I'm supported and I get to create what I desire here.
Beautiful. I love it. I love it all. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of this beautiful story with me and taking that time to be here with me, present with me. And can you let everybody know where people can find you, your Instagram or Facebook, and even your coaching program? How does it work?
Sure, absolutely. And thank you for having me. Thank you so much. I wish you so much success. Um, I can be found at Linda Brain Coach on Instagram and website lindabraincoach.com. And the podcast is Empowered the Podcast, and they can go and listen to your episode, which was just a couple weeks ago, and it's a really good one. And yeah, and my coaching program is, so I do multiple things, but I am specializing in women empowerment.
Mhm.
And I also have my Dream Builder coaching, which is for men and women. Anybody that has a dream, a goal, a desire to change their life, just giving them the tools. It's a 12-week program. And I offer these free vision workshops free vision master classes once a month. And there's also a webinar that's pre-recorded that they can have access to.
Perfect. That's amazing. And what we'll do is put that all in the description as well so that people can find all this information easier. And I just want to say thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I appreciate it.